Why did the song Rich Men North of Richmond go so viral and take on a life of its own and speak to the soul of so many people? We're going to dig deep into this. We're going to look at the interviews that Oliver Anthony did and explore this topic in a way that I think not a lot of people have covered. So I'm glad you're with me. Let's get into it.
You know, what I do like to do is repost things that I think are interesting. I do like that.
Yeah, well, thanks.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Well, that's what Instagram I put that up on.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, a lot of people liked it. I think on my account alone, it had more than, let me say, I'll tell you how many views it had. I want to say it's somewhere around 11 million views. I was explaining to someone the other day. I was like, do you know how insane that is?
Yeah.
Like that, you could put something up that this guy just made 12.8 million views.
Wow.
That's bonkers, dude. That's bonkers. That's a lot of fucking human beings. That's a lot of human beings.
Yeah, so I've had to ask myself, like, why that happened the way it did.
And that's what we're going to look at. Why did it happen the way it did? It's really interesting. You know, is there a naturalistic explanation there? And maybe it is. Maybe it is just that Joe Rogan shared it. Joe Rogan's popular. A lot of people grabbed a hold of it. A lot of people saw it going viral, and so they grabbed a hold of it. And there could certainly be sort of a naturalistic explanation behind this song. But you can see it right here. They don't really know why it went so viral. Later on, we're going to look at a clip from Paul VanderKlay, who goes into like why internet things go viral. What's the force behind it? We're going to mash these two up and kind of make a dialogue with them. But right there, you can see it's bigger than Joe Rogan. It's bigger than Oliver Anthony music. It's bigger than the internet. It's bigger than just things going viral. At least that's the sense that I have. You let me know.
Look, I've said this 100 times already, but like I'm certainly no preacher. Like people have made comments about like, oh, well, why does he reads scripture or whatever and talks about God, but then he does other things like I do have some foul language and I do sing some songs that I've written about whatever, you know, getting high and hanging out in the woods. But like I do want to use, if there's anything I'd like to capitalize on with my opportunity, it's just like, because for me, just being in the position that I've been in the last 2 years and just the trash I've had in my head is, I tell you, like, I don't care who and look, I haven't been in a church in 10 years and I'm not saying I'd ever go back into one again. I don't know about all that, but there's a lot of things in Proverbs and Ecclesiastes that make sense and are timeless to today. Like if people just could if people could just have enough open-mindedness to just read a little bit of Proverbs and just see what it has to say, I think like it would make the world a better place. There's a lot of truth in those words. They don't just talk about it's real life advice that I work toward every day applying in my own life.
So I want you to think about that as we move through this podcast. Because again, we're going to pull from a Paul VanderKlay clip that comes up that touches on what they say is a sense-making crisis. People are trying to make sense of the world. And if you've been in the Paul VanderKlay orbit at all or touched on John Vervaeke and the awakening from the meaning crisis, I thought it was really interesting that, one, he says, I haven't been in a church in 10 years and I don't know that I'll ever go back, okay? But then he points to Scripture and he points to Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. And if you think of Proverbs, I mean, they're both wisdom, but Proverbs is very, you know, sort of like basic wisdom for day-to-day life. That's the making sense of the world type of issue. And Ecclesiastes is very much more like a search for meaning. So when he said he reads Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, of course I had this Paul VanderKlay episode in the back of my mind. I've kind of been thinking about a lot of these things, why this song touched so many people, and really looking at it from the standpoint that Oliver Anthony's song is a microcosm. You know, the reason he wrote this song is because he's sick and tired. And I think a lot of people are sick and tired. So there's a sickness going on. There's a real quest for meaning, and there's a real challenge in making sense of the world that we live in today. And you could call it COVID, you could call it whatever, but a lot of people seem to be waking up to this. And I think that this song hit people at the right time and the right place. I think as you hear Christopher talk about why he wrote that song, I think you can probably identify with it. I think a lot of people can identify with it. And if we were to give just basic categories to it, it's we're trying to make sense of the world and we're trying to find meaning, and we're not doing too good at either of those. So there's that, and there's a little piece, and we'll unpack this a little bit more. But the fact that the church is not the answer, and I'm a Christian. I look at these sort of cultural shifts and cultural phenomenons from a Christian worldview, and so I hear that and I go, yeah, I kind of understand that. Something has happened in the church that makes the church, and when I say church in this context, I kind of just mean the institution of the church. It has become underutilized in its ability to help people wake up from this meaning crisis or this sense-making crisis. It's just underutilized, and it's become kind of uninteresting or irrelevant, if you could say. Now, I don't think there's a total collapse there of the church. I think there's a lot of like sort of revival happening. But yeah, it is unfortunate to hear someone say that, man, they're digging deep. They're really searching for meaning. And look, I haven't been in the church in 10 years, and I'm not sure I'm going to go back. So there's all of those themes kind of go into this podcast. And so, yeah, again, I'm glad you're here. I hope this is meaningful for you. I really think it's going to be, again, share it with a friend if you know somebody who kind of like could relate to that, because once we unpack this and get to the end here, I think it is really going to be helpful. It's helpful for me. Let me say that. It's helpful for me, and I hope to share it with you guys, and I hope you guys share it with the people that you know and care about in your life. So
was there like a moment with you, because I've read the legend story, but I wanted to ask you this live in person. Was there a moment when you had like a literal come to Jesus moment where you realized you were at rock bottom?
Yeah, I mean,
what was going on?
Yeah, I was at a point where I was having, man, I don't even think I'd call it panic attacks. It was just like, everything was just so screwed up. I was getting like, I was getting chest pains and shooting pains all down into my, like I was having like almost cardiovascular symptoms that are just, I guess now I realize they're stress and anxiety related, but I really thought I was going to die. Like,
holy shit. This is why you're drinking a lot? Weed a lot?
Yeah, well, I think maybe the weed was even causing some of that. Like I was slamming down, we can grow it in Virginia now. So I grew, I grew a lot of pounds of weed last year. And so like I've got, and I don't even know what I'm going to do with it all now.
You can sell that on eBay.
I've got, yeah. We'll talk about all that in the growing, because I am intrigued with the growing. But yeah, to your point, it was like I just almost disconnected from reality. I don't want to say I was having like, I was never psychotic or having like.
You're freaking out, man.
I was very disassociated from like my reality. Like I can remember just being around really close friends having dinner one night. You get warm and fuzzy feelings being around people you care about, and everything was just ice cold. Like I just tried. It was almost like I just tried to feel something other than what I was feeling.
And what were you thinking during these times?
I was thinking that,
like, what was the state of your life?
I was thinking like that I was thinking like, I don't know. Suicide's a weird thing because, and I can't speak for everybody, but for me, like, it wasn't that I ever wanted to kill myself. Like, I knew I wanted to keep trying to fight and get out of whatever it is I was in, but it was almost like at some point I thought I was going to do it almost as a fight or flight response, like that I couldn't escape whatever it is that I was in, and like that was going to eventually be my only way out. And so as sad and as whatever, like I hate even talking about this, but I feel like I should talk about it. I mean, where else to talk about it but on Joe Rogan? But it's like that was one of the things that compelled me to throw a lot of these videos up just off my phone. At least there'd be something there for them to be able to capitalize on and make.
Was your bad feelings come from? Did they come from a lack of hope for your future? Did you have like a sense of what would make you happy? What you were missing in your life?
No, like it's.
Or was it just
the mind is. Well, and for like, I guess I'm a creative person, I guess you'd say. And so like for creative people in general, life is very imaginative anyway. So like, again, it's like you and I could go to the same restaurant, sit down, order the same meal, have the same waitress, identical everything, right? In a parallel time. And you and I would walk out of that restaurant noticing different things, experiencing it completely different. Like the mind perceives things individually, right? And so like when you get into a bad headspace like that, your perception of what would otherwise be good things can become very bad. And I don't know the best way to explain it, because I'm not well versed on psychology or anything like that. But that's the best way I can explain it. Is like you don't understand sometimes what people are going through, even from the outside in. You look at people who are not living life right, and you're like, I just wish he'd just get his shit together. I don't understand why he's doing that. And it's like, because maybe in his head, what he's looking at is totally different than what you're looking at. And the mind's very complicated, and my understanding is even now with all the studies we've done and the technology we have, like we understand the mind very little, but there's so much that goes into it. And like so much of our thoughts come from our gut biome and all, like there's millions of living things within us that I think influence the way we think and what we do. And it's a very complicated thing. So yeah, it's easy for people to get off track, and it's hard to get back on the track when you get off.
Yeah. So I hope you can hear some of that, and either you can identify with some of that, or someone who can identify with that. I would hazard to guess that some of those themes are very near and dear, maybe not dear to us, but those struggles are very common. That sense of hopelessness, struggles with suicide, that feeling of being ice cold. There's no warm and fuzzies, even though you're around people you know and love. I mean, that's a deep depression. And he said a couple of times, he wanted to sort of break free from whatever it was that had a hold of me. And that's what we want to kind of press into in this podcast. How can we break free from whatever it is? First thing we're going to do is we're going to name that thing, potentially, or at least one of them. Because I think as I listen to this, I hear Joe and I hear Chris with an honest pursuit of like understanding what's going on, and yet seem to be limited by looking for answers within kind of a naturalistic framework. That's why the conversation about marijuana comes up. Is, can marijuana help you? Chris says, I think it was actually contributing to some of the anxiety that I felt. And so these things are just rampant in our culture today. Why is anxiety, depression, thoughts of suicide? Why is it that we feel a sense of hopelessness, or we cannot access joy or peace or happiness? What are the things that are interrupting that? And to use Chris's language, what is the thing that has a hold of us? So, again, I think that a lot of people can identify with this. I do have like a really nerdy graph. Okay, that's not really a graph. It's more of like just an illustration here. I want to kind of take you through something really quick. And that's just, again, we kind of look at themes in culture. We're looking at sort of patterns, and I'm painting with a broad brush here. I'm making broad strokes. But if you go back in history, people had a sense of God. Theism, the idea of God. God was sort of in control. God ordered things, and if you didn't like it, okay, take it up with God. All right, got it. So theism, and then you have deism, this idea that, okay, so we had this sort of scientific revolution, or we're learning, we're discovering why, sort of how things function, maybe not why they function, but we don't need God to explain all the mysterious stuff that's going on in the world, or at least we think we don't need God anymore to explain all the mysterious stuff. Lightning happens, because static electricity in the atmosphere, something like that. Okay, that's your naturalistic explanation. We don't need Thor. He's not up on his mountain hammering on the anvil. It's like, okay. So we've moved into this deism where we've pushed God away. We still need God to start everything, but we don't need God to explain every natural phenomenon that's going on. But it's a short step there from going from theism to deism to naturalism, where it's like, well, now we don't need God to explain the origin of anything. So there's a gravity here. We're sinking down into this, at least from, again, maybe I'm biased here because I am a theist, that naturalism is a kind of a step lower than that. We don't need God at all. And now the question of meaning comes in. Well, if there is no God, where did I come from? And did I just, I am the end product of a process that didn't have me in mind. That is rough, that's a rough thing. Okay, so that leads to nihilism. There is no meaning. There is no answer. There is no ultimate purpose in life because there is no God. And then we have to, and this is Francis Schaeffer's point. His fear was that as we progressed through these stages, that we would take an illogical leap into some form of mysticism. I'm not as concerned with that. I think that we could leap in a different way, though. I think that, that we could actually come back into some sense of theism, maybe even Christian mysticism. Maybe that's a bad term. I don't know. Maybe mysticism puts too much emphasis on mystery, but I think where people go wrong sometimes is that we don't do theology well. We think God is just the explanation for the gaps in our ignorance or the gaps in our knowledge, which we call ignorance. That's not what God is. We're pursuing knowledge, and because God is ultimately behind everything, and God is the ultimate value. Again, we will come full circle to this at the end when we unpack the meaning behind music and worship. But God is the ultimate value. God is behind everything and gives everything ultimate meaning and purpose. But that doesn't mean we will ever discover everything about God. There will always be a sense of mystery and awe. We will always pursue more knowledge of God because we're finite. He is infinite. We are imperfect. He is perfect until we are made perfect again. So hopefully that's helpful. Theism, deism, naturalism, nihilism. Then there's this question of mysticism that comes in. Is mysticism irrational, or can we have a sense of mystery as we kind of recover maybe something that we lost in our worldview, a theological foundation that would help us with this sense-making crisis and this meaning crisis, and what is what we're experiencing today, an awakening from that. And is this song a clue that people are waking up from that? Now, I don't want to make too much of the song. I think it's a great song, but again, I think it's a barometer telling us something's happening in culture, something's happening in society, if you will. And so, again, I think when I hear this interview, I do get this sense that at least during the interview, Joe and Chris are kind of looking at the natural and saying, well, yeah, I really want to be free of whatever it is that's got a hold of me. But what is it? Is it just neurological? Is it just diet? Is it just gut biome? Is it just environmental? Stress at work and stuff like that. I think all of those things do contribute to it. But is there a spiritual element that we have lost because we have rejected that theism and we've worked our way all the way down into nihilism? If you wanted to look at a video, I did a few videos on sort of rediscovering a biblical cosmology. This idea that we live in a world that is material and spiritual. They're not diametrically opposed to each other. They form one whole reality, just like a person is not just a mind or a body. A person is a mind and a body and a spirit. So
yeah, like when I was outside of work, it's like I'd drink, I'd get just absolutely stoned, and I would just sit around and try to think about anything but what it was that I really needed to be doing, which was like, and it's kind of like funny, but that's ended up what kind of sparked me into like writing all these songs and doing all this stuff, because it's like I don't know, just like with you, probably with what you do, jiu-jitsu or whatever, it's like for me, songwriting it gets my head, like you said, getting your head clear, because that's all you can, songwriting is interesting for different people, but now that I've been in the industry for 2 weeks and I've talked to like,
now that you've been in the industry, you conquered it.
Now that I'm an industry expert, it's like some of the other musicians I've talked to, like the people I've looked up to over the years, they experience this too, but certain people, when you songwrite, it's a very, it's dramatic. That's when I decided like, all right, I'm doing this thing. But yeah,
so you were just smoking too much weed, drinking too much, and just procrastinating.
Yeah. And so that, and like, anxiety is definitely something that's underestimated. I used to but I used to just not really understand when people talked about mental health and anxiety, because everyone gets stressed out over stuff, and so you think of anxiety as being just like this normal phenomenon everyone deals with, but your mind can really put you in a dark place to where that thing is just like, it just holds on to you like and it just makes it very difficult for you to do anything. And so I spent at least 2 years of my life almost constantly just having what felt like just a knot right here, just wrenching at me.
Well, that's especially true for people that are pursuing a non-traditional life, that doesn't have any guarantees.
Yeah. Does what has guarantees? I wonder. Okay. So you pick up on that sense that something has a hold of you. But I love that Chris is saying, okay, in the midst of this struggle, music was an outlet. He even says music was very dramatic. So I think of story. I think of narrative. If you've looked at Jordan Peterson, that's one of the things that he talks about, recapturing a narrative as a part of this whole sort of crisis that we are in. So I wanted to share this really quick. There is a power behind music that will help us with this conversation, that will help us with this dialogue. I kind of pull from Plato's Republic a lot. That work really has informed a lot of my thinking when it comes to sort of politics. And when I say politics, I don't necessarily mean modern politics where we're, the modern idea of what we think of when we think of politics, but the polis, the people, how do we order society? How do we order the people? And is it possible to find a way to order people in a way that creates harmony? Socrates looked at the city in a way to zoom in on the soul, what was going on in the soul. And we do that with podcasts today. So we don't have we have sort of the globe. And he said that the soul is made up of three parts. The person is made up of three parts: mind, body, and spirit. And I touched on that just a second ago. Okay, is the problem just a mind problem? Is it just a body and gut biome problem? Is it just environmental? We're reacting to our environment, or is there a spiritual element to the problem? And music has three parts, and so music can be a very powerful, transformative force. And so you have the mind, you have melody, you have lyrics, and I'm not a music expert, so don't grill me on this. And if I got one of these wrong, okay, there's three parts to music. Okay, there's the body, there's the rhythm, the beat, that seems very bodily. You kind of go, and then there's the spirit, harmony that brings it together. And if you unpack the Republic a little bit, what Socrates says is that the body is very powerful. The appetitive nature of the human is very powerful. It's very strong, and the mind is not strong enough to overcome the appetitive nature. The spirit is not strong enough to overcome the appetitive nature, but the mind and the spirit together could bring that appetitive nature sort of under control, so in a sense create a harmony. And I think that's what we're looking for. We are looking for harmony. So there's a song now that has just captured people, and songs do this. You can think of the Battle Hymn of the Republic. You can think of songs like that historically have just captivated people and been a force for revolution, a force for transformation. And we're going to look at that a little bit with this Paul VanderKlay clip, because again, what Chris is saying is, what is that? And he didn't use the word force, but what is the force that has a hold of me? What is I want to wake up from this. I want to get out of this. And I don't really know what it is, and I don't really know how to get out. So we need to learn a little bit from Paul VanderKlay in this next clip to really unpack that further. This is about a year ago. I'll leave the link to this video, but he's actually responding to and unpacking a conversation that happened on Rebel Wisdom. And they're talking about, again, this sense-making crisis that exists, and using the internet kind of as an example, and then asking the question of okay, why do things go viral on the internet? What is happening? And they even say that when things go viral on the internet, it's almost like a brain functioning. And so they begin to ask the question, what is behind these types of things, which is going to help us with this conversation about Richmond, north of Richmond. If we pull back the curtain, who's the wizard behind the machine? That's what we're going to look into.
Postulate that if you had some people in one social network, some other people in another social network, those two social networks might have these kind of internet entities that are thinking different things and are competing with each other for overall available brain space in the human population to survive.
Wow. Again,
love Paul.
This is just straight out of the New Testament. You have principalities and powers. Or how about the book of Daniel? You've got the prince of Persia standing in the way of the angel that's trying to get to little old Daniel. Well, how is the prince of Persia standing in the way of getting to little old Daniel? You have to, we experience this all the time with our different little, he's calling them echo chambers. How to convince your father or your mother or your son or your daughter or your neighbor or the citizen that is within your gates of a different perspective. You have to go through their principality. They have a patterned way of thinking. They have a patterned way of belief. Now, again, in modernity, belief is so abstracted, but they have a patterned way of life. They have a patterned way of behavior that is dominated by their principality. And the only way that that is going to change is if a stronger principality comes and unseats it.
Okay. So again, and Paul is talking about groups of people and really how this would work out in a dialogue. And I think 100% right, because you probably have people that, particularly over the last couple of years, and the internet has perpetuated this, we're segregated into these different groups of ideological camps. And it's really hard. We keep colliding with each other. We're not able to move through. But we're also, to listen to Chris and Joe talk, we're also having a trouble even getting out of the thing that has captured us. So we have a sense that we need to get out from under this, and to use the New Testament term and to use what Paul's language is, the principality. So there we are. Now we've named the thing. With Chris and Joe, we're talking about just the thing that has us. Okay, well, is that thing a principality, a power that is, again, it's not just my mind, it's not just my gut, but it's something that is putting pressure on me from outside of myself and keeping me down or keeping me somewhat captured by thoughts of depression, suicide, or what have you. And a stronger power needs to come and unseat that thing, that principality, which that's where music comes in. That's where the song comes in. Now, we will I don't want to make too much out of one song, so I'm speaking more of music in general as a way, as a transformative force to help us. And the music actually connects us to a much deeper thing that will actually help us and rescue us. But that, to me, is a helpful tool to get through a principality. Music in some ways is even universal. It will speak to people, and in a way that maybe a conversation or an argument or a dialogue couldn't. So anyway, again, just to sort of tie the two clips together, Paul is talking generally about communities of people, and Chris and Joe are kind of talking more personally about the thing that has them captured.
Red pill, bread pill, conversion, transformation. A stronger power has to take hold of it and exercise it. Why is it that I keep calling Jordan Peterson the unauthorized exorcist? Well, because what is he doing? He is exorcising people who have been in domination. They have had a place in the matrix, a place in the superorganism, and they are pulled from that and they are brought into another one. I mean, this is what drove me crazy when I first started doing this, because my other clergy couldn't see, because they're all in dominant within, basically so deep within the church organism that they couldn't see out of it.
Okay, so that goes back to Chris's issue. I haven't been in church in 10 years. I don't know if I will. Why? Because it does seem that, and I don't want to make the mistake of saying, there's just this one church. Like, God always has his people. God always has a remnant. And yet it does seem like a lot of the church is struggling with the same problem that everybody in the world is struggling with. The church as an organization is captured as well. And this is sad, because historically the church has been, a place where people go to find guidance, a place where people go to find freedom. Now, the church isn't the thing that frees you. Ultimately, it's pointing you to Jesus. But the church has also, if you think back to the Oliver Anthony song, the church has been a powerful force for transformation, because it's a group of people all focused on Jesus, not focused on the world, not focused on COVID, not focused on whatever, tyrannical thing is happening. We're focused on Jesus. Fix your eyes on him, right? And when you join a group of people that aren't focused on the tyranny and the masks and the COVID and all the other things, they're focused on the Lord, the God who created all things, and they're worshiping him. They seem to be free. Now they're not perfect. They're struggling. They have challenges in their life, but they seem to some way be free from that tyranny. So do you see? I hope I'm doing an okay job of drawing these two things together, because I see it and I realize it's sort of hard to communicate what I'm seeing, but there is that that sense of worship, that the music is not worship, but it points us to what we would consider maybe a life of worship. Music is kind of a part of that, but it's not a life of worship in its totality. And the church historically has seemed to have a little bit more of an immunity against tyranny. And I would even say that the church has been a dangerous force or a dangerous challenge for tyrannical regimes historically, because the people of the church seem to have a way of being free even though they might be slaves. So what do you do then? How do you keep those people in check if they're not afraid to die? Like that's a powerful, powerful force. And I think, unfortunately, we have replaced that sort of, dreaded air quotes here, dangerous Christianity with kind of safe church. Safe church says the things that they think people want to hear, and they comply, and they, when I say comply, I don't mean that in disrespect towards leadership, but they comply with maybe tyrannical forms of oppression that happen in the world, rather than living a life of freedom that has been provided to them by Jesus through the Spirit in the church, and even like incorporating this music, this worship, So anyway, yeah, it is unfortunate that the church is not that the church isn't always that place. It's unfortunate that the church isn't always that place that people go to find that kind of freedom.
This is all New Testament language that's going on here.
So there's some talk in like very dark intellectual circles that I traffic in where they're calling these things egregores, because that's what an egregore is. Like the definition of an egregore was a kind of demon that manifests out of a shared belief system.
A demon that manifests out of a shared belief system. Oh, you mean like school spirit? Mm-hmm. You mean like the spirit of your church, or the spirit of your club, or the spirit of your family, or the spirit of your city, or the spirit of your nation, or the spirit of your tribe, or the spirit of your political party, or the spirit of your Discord server, or the spirit of your conversation?
The spirit of the nation, right? The spirit of America, maybe. Again, tying to this song, is there something to that song or songs like it? Is there a spirit of, and I don't want to say like the American spirit, because then people are just going to put me in this like sort of Christian nationalist camp, which I'm not. I have dual citizenship to some degree. I mean, I'm a citizen of heaven. I'm an alien and a sojourner in this world. I love the country that I have grown up in, and I am sad that it has changed. I'm sad for my kids that I'm a child of the 80s. I wish my kids could have a similar childhood, because I thought, Hammer Pants and, those types of things were really fun. That's MC Hammer, by the way, if you can Google it. So I am a little sad, that sort of American dream, again, end quotes. Well, you know what? I'm not sad, actually, because, and I'll link this as well, because John Lovell did a really good initial reaction to the Oliver Anthony song. And what he said was, it is a funeral song. It is a dirge to the American dream. But as a Christian, I know that unless a seed falls into the ground and dies, it will not bear much fruit. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay with letting that quote unquote American dream die, because I wasn't living for that American dream. Maybe I was, but I'm living for a heavenly kingdom, or at least I'm trying to. And I need to be a better example of showing my kids that I'm living for that heavenly kingdom. And so maybe that seed of the American dream needs to go into the ground and die so that we can see the fruit that comes out of it. But is there something that has awoken in the American, quote unquote, American spirit because of this song or songs like it? Let me know what you think.
It's manifest out of a shared. But now, again, we imagine...
This is really good.
Now, in a materialist framework, we imagine that this is emergence from below, because matter is foundational and spirit is imagined to be derivative. And so here, this egregore is what these people are creating. Now, the reason that he's saying it this way is because he is deep, again, within a modernist culture. And we don't have, it's not that we don't have language. We've banished language because actually this egregore, he had to pull it back from another source and bring it back into our period and say, oh, look, this is a spirit that is, but here's the question. Is it emergence, or has this spirit lived before? Are there, in fact, a world of spirits that are, in fact, competing against each other?
Is there, in fact, a whole world of spirits, a cosmic world of spirits that are competing against each other for your attention? Which, to me, takes us right back to this Oliver Anthony song. Is that song powerful because there's a group of people all turning their attention to that song, and something is sort of manifesting out of that shared attention? Or is the power of the song due to a spirit that has lived before, that we are waking up to? I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, is it that shared attention that gave it power? Or is there a power that it's sort of gesturing towards, turning our attention towards? And when we turn our attention towards that thing, and I would say it's freedom. Freedom would be the thing that it's turning our attention to. Maybe there's a spirit of freedom that has existed before, a spirit of liberty, an anti-tyrannical spirit, that this song is sort of a tool, an instrument, if you will, to turn our attention to that. And if you can think back to just the last couple of years, all of our attention has been on tyranny and lockdowns and disease and all of these like really negative things. And unfortunately, those things seem to gain power or grow the more we attend to them. So if you want to be a person of freedom, attend to freedom. Attend to those things that bring you freedom. Don't turn your attention to the tyranny and, oh, look at what these guys are doing and look what those guys are doing and all that stuff. Stop. Like that. I think that's the power behind this song, is to pull us out of having our attention fixed on these things that are taking our freedom and turning it towards something that might give us freedom. And Paul is talking about this in the context of, this sort of egregore, this demon that comes out of a shared, attention or shared consciousness. But are there good spirits? There are bad, but are there good? 1 John chapter 4, beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits and see whether they are from God. For many false prophets have gone out into the world. That's a good warning to us. There are good spirits, there are bad spirits. We are in a cosmic battle, a struggle. And we know a spirit is from God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God. So there's a way we can tell whether a spirit is from God or not. It's like that spirit or that song or whatever it might be. If it turns your attention towards the Spirit of God through Christ, then it's for your good. It's on your side. It's an ally in this cosmic struggle. If it's not, then it just wants your attention to feed off of that attention, right? And I think this is where maybe sort of the Christian nationalist idea gets it wrong. Is like if what we're talking about is the spirit of America, the spirit of liberty, the spirit of freedom, the anti-tyrannical spirit, the rebellion against tyranny that we as an American, and of course, again, I speak as an American, that we as Americans inherited, that allowed the American Revolution to take place. And if it was a different time and a different place and a different people, it wouldn't have happened the way it did if not for this, maybe air quotes, spirit of freedom that maybe we have inherited. Maybe we have forgotten that we inherited that spirit of freedom. But where we go wrong from like sort of a Christian nationalist perspective is that if that American spirit is an end in and of itself, it will become a demon. It is a demon. If all it points to is itself, then it's a demon. If the American dream is an end in and of itself, then it's a nightmare. That the American dream is not pointing us to this city of man, that we call America, it's pointing us to the city of God, where we find true freedom, where we come into harmony again with our Creator. That, I think, is worth remembering. And I think that if what we are seeing, if we're witnessing is sort of an American spirit, now it goes beyond America. I think every person has that desire for freedom because we're created by a loving God who created us for that freedom. If that American spirit is good for anything, if it's good in any way, it is to point us back to our Creator, the Spirit of God, in whom we can find freedom.
What if the spirits are vying for us? Now, to me, this brings up C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters. Because what Lewis basically postulates is that, yeah, the spirits are vying for us. They want us for food. But the Father above wants us for sons who can participate.
Yeah, that is worth remembering. Now, that's C.S. Lewis. It's a fictional book, Screwtape Letters. If you want, I'll leave a link. There's going to be all kinds of links in the comments section, or not the comments section, the description section. And I do that because I hope that these videos can be helpful for you as you explore the deep and meaningful topic of theology. So again, if you know people who would benefit from this discussion, please share this video with them, share these links with them, because I think I do think that we're a part of like some kind of awakening or revival that's happening, and I hope that this community, this Strange Theology channel, and the community around it can be a part of that. I don't know that the algorithm is going to help us here. I think we have to be kind of an algorithm.
Well, let's just think about this for a moment. There's a world of complexity and nuance out there, but when we read history, don't we recognize things? So yeah, it's low resolution. Yeah, it's limited in participation. But some spirits come around again. In fact, when Jordan Peterson and many in the IDW 1.0 are anxious about what wokeism is going to do, they are worried that the spirit, let's say the spirit of communism, is going to once again descend and occupy the people. This isn't new to us. We don't talk like this most of the time, but isn't this exactly what we're talking about?
Yeah. Are we, and that's the big fear, right? That communism, the sort of spirit of communism would come and sort of, again, captivate people. Here's what's so funny about this. Are you guys ready? And if you're still here at this point, thank you so much. I love that you're here. I do really love these conversations, and I hope they're meaningful for you. Do you know what? Communism tried to take root in Italy, and I'll leave a link to some of these articles. But communism in Italy and elsewhere, do you know what prevented communism from really taking a foothold in those areas? Disco. Disco music defeated communism. So again, I'm not trying to make too much of the Oliver Anthony song, but there is something going on there that should not be overlooked. This is Luke chapter 10. Now, the 70 returned with joy, saying, Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name. Thank you, Jesus. Going all the way back to the Joe Rogan interview. How can I get out? How can I overcome this thing that has a hold of me? Well, if that thing is a principality, if that thing is sort of connected to, at the very least, something that's going on in the spiritual realm, the cosmic battle that's going on, we've got a way out. Guys, we've got a way out. Like, we can beat this thing. He has won, and he's welcoming us into that victory. He said to them, I was watching Satan fall from heaven like lightning. Again, that cosmic realm. Now, well, I won't go too much into that. He saw Satan fall like lightning. There's probably more we could say on this. Behold, I give you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions over all the powers of the enemy, and nothing will injure you. Now, take that with the rest of Scripture. We are going to have challenges, but no temptation has overcome you except for that which is common to man, and God has given you a way out, right? God is faithful. He has given you a way out so that you can endure, so that you can stand up under those trials, those temptations. That's the promise of Scripture, So you take that in context here, that nothing will injure you, nothing's going to be able to crush you down. Nevertheless, do not rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you, but rejoice that your name is recorded in heaven. I hope that you can be encouraged by that. I can't help but think of Lord of the Rings because I'm a nerd. And, Gandalf says to Frodo, Frodo is he's sad. He's like, I wish the ring never came to me. I wish I'd never lived to see this great and horrible battle that we're facing. And Gandalf says, yeah, everyone who lives to see such times feels the same way. But you were meant to find the ring. There are other forces at work in this world other than those that have a will towards evil. There are forces for good. And that is an encouraging thought indeed. I hope that you can be encouraged in that as well. So, I will catch you in the next one.